extremely privileged and honored to have a moment with Jean-Michel Jarre. He has been and still is a pioneer throughout his exceptional career as a composer and a performer. He has sold more than 85 million records around the world and has played a major role in the early days of electronic music. New technology has never frightened him, quite the contrary. It motivates him in his creativity. He recently had a birthday, and at an age when most people would slow down, he just keeps looking forward, surprising us with his creativity and his futuristic vision. He has just released a new album, Oxymore, which is accompanied by a metaverse called Oxyville. So welcome, Jean-Michel Jarre. We are very pleased to have you with us from Paris, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Muriel, and sorry not being with you physically, but I'm really pleased and honored to be part of this whole new edition, 2023 edition, and ready to share some ideas and Q&As and whatever. It's always a pleasure to be amongst you all. I see some friends, and I say hello to the head of IRCAM, because it's my old friend Frank Madlener, and some other people I can see from here. So I'm ready.
You're ready. Okay. So tell us more about this new album, Oxymore, because it's something completely new that you've done with this album.
Yeah, it's a project I had in mind for quite a long time. I've always been interested and involved in how to approach the 3D audio. I mean, and spatial audio. I mean, we always had for centuries a kind of frontal relationship with music. When you are composing for an orchestra, you visualize the orchestra in front of you with the strings and percussions and winds on the left. When you are in studio, you are in front of PA systems. When you are in a concert hall, you have the PA systems in front of you or the orchestra. We've been for centuries like a painter in front of a canvas. And actually stereo doesn't exist in nature. When I'm talking to you in mono. When a bird is singing in mono. And it's the environment around us and our human ears which are creating the space and the 360 feeling and sense of immersion. And with technology today, we can, for the first time, really, to really compose and conceive an album and a piece of music in space. It's what I've done with Oxymore. The idea of actually taking all parts of the orchestration, the arrangement, and placing them, instead of placing them from left to right, placing them in space. And of course, it's a total different approach for a total different result. And also being able to, these days, with the development of technology, to share this feeling with the audience, to be inside the music and not in front of it.
But so how does that change the way you compose? Because I imagine you must compose completely differently when you're thinking surround sound rather than frontal sound.
Yes, it's very true. I mean, for all composers and musicians are aware of this, the idea of the fusion between elements. If you take a symphonic orchestra, we took a long time to get actually a kind of final traditional order and placement of different instruments, and then to try to create this kind of fusion between the strings and the brass and all the different elements, and then shifting from one timbre to another, like mixing colors for painting. And of course, the risk is also if you put too much, it's becoming gray. Painters know that, and as musicians, when suddenly you have the opportunity to place all your elements, almost all your instruments in space, you are confronted to lots of different problems, in a sense, or each sound has a lot of space. And so that's fantastic to create a sense of depth, but at the same time, they are naked because they are quite isolated from each other. So you have to actually creating a new grammar, a new system and that I think will take quite some time to actually compose in a total different way. And I think, as we know, technology already in history, and maybe we'll talk about that later on, dictating styles, and this new way of sharing. I mean, sharing the music with the audience, and first of all with yourself during the composition process, is a total game changer.
And you also created, along with this album, which kind of goes together, an avatar of yourself that we can see in a video clip. Unfortunately, we won't be able to see it now, but that's called Oxyville. So why did you decide to do that? Why did you decide to go farther into this world of augmented or XR reality? You know what I mean, X-reality, sorry.
Absolutely. I mean, Muriel, I thank you for asking, because I think that I've always been interested in VR for quite a long time. Of course, the COVID time and the COVID period played the role of a kind of accelerator for all of us to be more familiar with screens and with the virtual means and tools. And I suddenly realized that the Metaverse and VR should be considered these days as a mode of expression in itself. It's something else than the regular spectacle vivant, the regular live performances. It's it's a little bit like the beginning of the cinema, when the Frères Lumière started to create the first movies. And lots of people from the theater were saying, okay, but these people on the white screen are not real actors, because a real actor is somebody on stage in front of a real audience. And the cinema and movies became a major art form, as we know. It's the same thing with Metaverse and VR. It's a mode of expression which is in itself and should be approached in such a way. And for a musician and for a creator, for a filmmaker or whatever, it's a total also different way to be in touch with your audience. The fact that you can have in the same virtual room people actually being on different continents. You can have in the same virtual hall, you can have somebody in Beijing or in New York or in Buenos Aires or Stockholm or Paris or Geneva, and also so you can reach people who are sometimes isolated for geographic reasons, for reason of handicap. I remember for the first performance of Oxymore in Oxyville. After the concert, I went into the Oxyville environment, and I was talking with a kind of Q&A kind of situation with the audience, the digital twins of all this audience. And one girl was very enthusiastic, and she was asking lots of questions. And then I asked her where she was, and she said, I'm in Manchester, in the UK. And I discovered, talking to her, that she was tetraplegic, and it was the first concert she was able to share with an audience. And she said that she was dancing all evening. So it shows that, of course, VR is enhancing the potential of a performance, and also you have no gravity on the Metaverse in VR, so you can create also stage scenographies that you can't design necessarily and create in the real world. And so I like this idea of a hybrid situation where you can be at the same time in a real hall or venue with musicians and in front of a real audience, and also at the same time being in a VR environment to share and to present your music in a different way. And it's this is the reason why for Oxymore, I decided to create this with a French startup called Vroom, VR Room, this kind of city between Metropolis and Sin City, a little bit in black and white, very
it's a bit dark. It's a
yeah.
bit dark, huh? Does this city? It's sort of a dark vision a little bit, no?
No, it's not necessarily dark. It's not because it's black and white that it's dark. I think, which is very important, and I think it's in ArtTech, it's also always important to talk about this when we create something, is always to be aware of the tools and the limitations you have. At the moment, to be in a live performance, to create a live performance in VR, you have to be conscious of the limitations and the fact that, for instance, you can have an image as sophisticated, as precise as you could have in a pre-produced project or like a movie. So I went with this idea of using a trick of constructivism and futurism with cubes and black and white cubic type of environment, allowing to create something which could be poetic, which could be different than the kind of sometimes a bit rough or naive design you can see in VR. So my idea was not to be necessarily dark, necessarily.
Okay. But will this technology, in your view, at least I've read that in an interview that you gave to a Swiss newspaper not too long ago, that you think that it will bring about new styles of music. But when you say new styles of music, is that going to be something completely new, or are we going to just be copying what already exists and turn it into more technical feat, if I could use that term?
Actually, it's based on the idea that it's always technology which is dictating styles, and not the reverse. Because we have created the violin that Vivaldi did, the music he did. Because we created the camera that we have Jean-Luc Godard or Tarantino or Fritz Lang. It's because also we had computers these days that we can create a total music with different tools and algorithms and softwares or synthesizers, and not the reverse. So actually, and any technological progress brought brought new styles of music, new styles of painting, and so on and so forth. It's because we have these days, for instance, when I started doing music, I could do electronic music because synthesizers and electroacoustic tools were I was able to use them, and then it created a new style of music. It's because we, for instance, in rock, somebody created an electric guitar so that it gave birth to rock and roll, and not the reverse. And then, of course, this moment of disruption we're in at the moment, probably one of the most important in human life, or for mankind in the past few centuries, is going to change our habits, to change the tools we're using, and necessarily is going to give birth to the next classical music, the next jazz, the next hip hop, the next rock, or the next electro. And each time we have to, the tools we are using are defining the styles we're creating. So actually, it's a big opportunity and a big luck for young artists and beginners today to live today with so many opportunities that and the fact that we can also having access to so many tools. Technology these days play as a role of democratization of the tools we can have access to, and then creating for a lot of people, giving the opportunity for beginners to create with exciting, revolutionary means and tools.
One of the preoccupations of musicians today is copyrights. New technology seems to add to that problem, and you have worked with a startup from Neuchâtel called Wyth to find a solution to these copyrights problems. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Actually, it's a very important point with the evolution of technology. We always have a big issue in terms of intellectual property, and we have been pioneer in Europe in those in this sector. The notion of authors' rights is born in the 18th century with Beaumarchais in France, and we always been actually I was the pioneers, but also having a different approach of respecting the rights of the authors. I will give an example. For instance, between in Europe, the idea is who is creating the content is the owner of the content. In the US, for instance, is who is producing and financing the content is the owner of the content. So with new tools, and especially with AI, there is a total new territory and a new situation that we have to organize, we have to think about. We have to create some rules where you know, it's very important to understand that rules are not a break or something against freedom. It's the reverse. It's you know, it's what make the difference between chaos and democracy are rules, basically. And you know, if you have a driving license, you have to follow the rules, and this is the access of freedom to drive safely. So it's the same thing exactly for the new technology, for how to cope with rights and authors' rights, especially for music on the internet, and of course tomorrow and even today with AI. And Wyth is developing a tech solution for this, and in a quite specific way. And this is the reason why that from day one, I think we need to encourage and to promote this kind of approach. I'm sure that our friends at Wyth could explain all this more in details. But the principle is actually really to you know, when you have a technology emerging, the answer is a technological one, and Wyth is giving and providing lots of solutions actually to protect artists. And protecting artists is not something that is linked to being very reactionary or linked with fear or linked with an idea of being against progress. It's the reverse. I mean, we have our vision as European. We have a specific vision of the future. And we need some tools to create and to continue to create, or to help and to protect artists, to help them to continue to
create,
live through their work. And just one thing is actually in Europe especially, we had for too long the idea of and the tendency to separate culture and tech. And I think this is a big mistake. I mean, culture and tech, more than ever, are absolutely interdependent, and artists and creators have a major role to play, to be a kind of go-between the day-to-day use of technology and dreams and the vision of the future, and being and not almost considering, I would say, technology in a disruptive, dystopian type of path.
Okay, I'm going to see if there's any questions out in the audience for you. I'm looking out to see if anybody has a question. Yes, there's a question there in front.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Alex. I'm 17 years old. I'm a musician. I play piano and I compose myself. And my question is, do you think that like originality will still exist if we know that AI has the capability of creating its own music, of inspiring itself of previous work, which we all do? So do you think there's still room for creativity in music and in general for artists, or is AI making the work just harder?
Did you hear the question?
Yes, thank you for asking. It's, of course, a very interesting question and very in phase with some fears and worries that everybody has in the world. I would say that, you know, you are a musician, and what's interesting is when you have a musical idea, why this musical idea is interesting and exciting for you. It's because it's unexpected. It's something that is disruptive, something that is coming as a surprise. And where is this musical idea coming from? It's coming from the idea of that you are harvesting your own analog data made of your memory, your culture, your environment, your heart, your sensitivity, your emotions. And actually, AI is exactly the same. It's actually harvesting in bigger data. So I think that, and also we should never forget that AI is harvesting the past and not the future. And then I consider AI as an extension of my imagination, and you always have the idea with and the possibility with AI to control, to say no to this proposal or yes, as a musician, as a creator, I think we should not be afraid of innovation, never ever. And actually, as a human being, there is a tendency for a human being to always think that yesterday was better and tomorrow is going to be worse, because probably you are safe with nostalgia. You are safe with the past, and we are always scared more one way or another about what may happen in the future. And technology is neutral; is all depending on what we do with this. It's like for the when we discovered the fission of atoms, we know that it gave the atomic bomb, but also we made a lot of progress in so many sectors. So I think that it's not, for a musician, I think these are new opportunities, and we have to learn how to use them. And I think that, you know, whatever the AI can produce, you will always have a new Miles Davis, a new Coldplay, or a new Billie Eilish, or a new Mozart, because these people are thinking outside the box, even if this box or today is an AI box. The fact that you will, and what makes the style of a musician unique is actually the fact of giving something that no algorithm can do, because you are who you are.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to stop the discussion here. Thank you very much, Jean-Michel Jarre, and we will remember to think out of the box, and when we do, we will think of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we've just heard from Jean-Michel Jarre how new tech can help creativity, but what about artificial intelligence? He touched on it just a little bit. Will it disrupt creativity? Jean-Michel Jarre doesn't seem to think so. Will it make creativity irrelevant? Jean-Michel Jarre doesn't seem to think so either. So this is the theme of our next roundtable, moderated by Marc Spiegler, who led Art Basel as its global director for 10 years, making it a household name all over the world. Under his tenure, Art Basel was launched in Hong Kong, Buenos Aires, and Paris. He is also a long-term visiting professor in cultural management at Milan's prestigious Bocconi University. And Marc Spiegler, we look forward to hearing from you and your panelists.
Thank you so much. I want to thank also Natalie for the introduction. I want to thank Natalie and the whole team at the ArtTech Foundation for hosting this wonderful and interesting mix of people, and my friends Stefano and Emilia at AP for helping this panel happen. It's a really interesting panel, and I think we deliberately chose a slightly confusing answer, because I think technology always both threatens and creates opportunities for us. And AI perhaps more so than any other. I'm joined by three people. To my left, immediate left, is Sabine Himmelsbach, who's the director for more than 10 years of the Haus der Elektronischen Kunst in Basel, one of the leading institutions really globally, and a place where, despite being very busy and rarely being in Basel, I saw a great many shows over the years that gave me a lot to think about in terms of where art and tech was going. To her left is Onome Ekeh, who is many things. Grew up in Nigeria, but also in the States. I think currently is more of a writer of speculative fiction and graphic novels, but has also been a designer, a painter, a filmmaker. And, you know, because I can't have 7 different artists on stage, I've had someone who wears many hats. And then to her left is Justine Vilgrain, who, along with her partner Patricia Glun, started an agency called Braw about 5 years ago. And it's both a Web3 and Metaverse agency, but also represents a group of 8 digital artists. So, you know, in essence, we have a curator, a multi-hyphenate artist, and then someone who works with artists and bringing them into the market and into interesting collaborations. Personally, I'm very interested in this topic. People think of me as this businessman who ran Art Basel, but actually I'm just a guy who is a journalist. I wrote for people like Wired and Industry Standard back in the 90s and around the 2000s, and eventually went into the art world as a fair director. But, you know, while I was at Art Basel, we were the first fair to be on Facebook, the first fair to be on Twitter, the first fair to work with Instagram. We had a pandemic, in the middle of which we launched the first online viewing rooms. So the mixture of art and tech has always been close to my heart, continues to be close to my heart, and will be something that I'll really be looking at as I move forward into this third career of mine. Now, I'm going to start with Sabine. You are someone who's worked for more than 10 years at the Haus der Elektronischen Kunst. AI is not a new topic for you. And you know, when AI erupted into everybody's consciousness in November after the release of ChatGPT, people suddenly also realized there were these other things that didn't make text, but also made images, like Midjourney and DALL-E. I mean, Midjourney was launched just over a year ago. DALL-E was launched almost exactly a year ago. So we have the 3 technologies that many people know about. But I mean, these are not new things for you or for the artists you're working with. And I'm curious, looking back, you know, how you think about the evolution of AI within the artists who you worked with. But then likewise, you know, how it is to have something that was sort of the daily bread of your intellectual thinking, the artists you're working with, become suddenly an obsession for everyone who's not living inside a cave.
Yeah, I had very different conversations with artists about it. Maybe let's just mention that we did one of the first art shows on AI and art in 2019, titled Entangled Realities. And the title reflected that AI is already everywhere, entangled in our lives. In that show, a lot of the artists wanted to explain how actually machine learning works, kind of like they wanted to open the black box and enable an understanding of these processes that are so opaque to us. Many artists have been pioneers, training their own AI models. For example, Mario Klingemann, who has worked with Google Arts and Culture as a resident artist for a long time. And with Mario recently, I had the discussion that he said, like, I'm a bit at a loss because all these models that he trained himself, all the knowledge he brought into it as a coder, now everybody can do it. So he really needed to take a step back for his own artistic practice to move forward. On the other hand, I have to say, since 2019, there was not one single show where we did not have an AI-based artwork in it. Now it's everywhere. A lot of artists are embracing the possibilities of working with these complex tools. And I also want to stress that everybody talks about it as a very potent tool. And another conversation I had, for example, with musician and artist Holly Herndon, who also was with the project in our last show, who is actually training her own voice model that she makes available for other people to use through a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. She's also questioning the opting out possibility, because our data on the web is there for everyone to be used. And she, with her partner, created a platform called Have I Been Trained, where at least you can look if your data has been in these training sets. And she's now also reaching out to the big AI companies like OpenAI, Stable AI, to get into a conversation. I think that's quite interesting.
Great. There's a lot in that, but the format of this panel is that I'll ask each of the panelists a question to kind of establish them with you and to get the basic going, and then we'll have a much broader conversation. And at the end, I want to have questions from the audience. So, start to think about what those will be. Next, Onome, you wear so many hats, I don't know where to start, but I'm curious, as someone not only who works with AI, but also as someone who's done a lot of thinking about different speculative, a lot of speculation about different futures. How do you think about this? How do you think about the fact that now everyone's talking about AI? And what does it mean for you as a member of society, but also as an artist?
I'm happy that everyone's talking about it right now. I'm very curious about how it pans out. Maybe, I don't know, I think that we've been trained to think about the apocalypse, like about the singularity, that robots are going to take over. So that has always shadowed it. And I think we have a bad conscience about artificial intelligence because of our history, or rather the history of colonialism or empire. So I think that's what a lot of the panic is around. But on the other hand, everyone's excited, because you can become autonomous. You can break away from, the menial tasks that sort of take up your, like getting your business done. It just presents a lot of opportunity. So that's how I think about it. I'm really curious about, it hasn't really taken, like right now we're talking about it, but I'm curious about what happens when it enters like real operation in places like Nigeria or West Africa, what that actually happens. Because I remember when the internet hit Nigeria, even though we think of Nigeria as inventing the internet somehow, because people didn't really have computers per se, but all of a sudden you had these things called 419s, these scam operations where an African prince was writing you. And these were just operations run out of like these little hubs. But it was just sort of like an invention of like how to use the tech to, move along. But now I'm thinking about how actual innovation can come about.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question, because I think many people in this room, I saw how many hands went up when Nathan asked before how many of you have used ChatGPT. I think many of us use ChatGPT to do fairly boring things like writing proposals or writing that letter to your landlord you've been putting off for a while, or in my case, writing a contract and then translating it into Italian, which is a language I don't speak. But I imagine that you probably, I hope, I guess, that you may be using AI in more interesting ways. I'm curious if you could share with us a couple examples of how you use it in artistic ways, ways that feed directly into your work and not into creating time to do your work.
Okay, so the reason I got into Midjourney was because I had abandoned my sort of literary practice, and then I found myself, for reasons I won't get into, but then I found myself writing these film scripts, and I thought, oh, I wrote one, and I was like, now I have to produce it. And then I wrote another one, and then to stop, at some point I thought, well, create a storyboard at least, to get the production thing going. And I was immediately frustrated because even though I went to art school, my sort of drawing ability has atrophied so much that I couldn't really do a storyboard. And I wondered out loud, and I think Siri heard me. I thought, won't someone come up with a program with storyboards that doesn't look shitty, And then 6 months later, someone called me. It's like, that thing you were talking about, you should try DALL-E or Midjourney. So I started, and I was immediately frustrated because it completely disobeyed me. It would not do what I asked it to do. However, what it was doing, and I think this is the nature of AI or any kind of tech, I was finding these images contain a lot of myths, images from my childhood. So I was immediately, I guess it's a projection, but I started to go down the rabbit hole, and it started into its own language. So what's happened now, instead of storyboarding, I started creating these graphic novels because I thought, why am I stuck in this idea of film? I can make a visual
So you took the plot of what you thought was going to be a film, and then you used the images created by AI as the graphic novel. I mean, graphic novels are also adapted, like Watchmen or
exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like, the Jesus Christ Superstar was an album first, before it became a Broadway play, then a film.
Exactly.
So this is what I'm going to do.
But I mean, you're just sort of, so that's really interesting. Justine, last but not least, let's talk first about the agency, the web agency part of things, like where you're working with clients, clients such as Nike and Hogan and Caring Group. So you're working with some really major brands in this new space. And I'm curious what the fact that all of them know about the existence of AI means. Like, is there like a pre-ChatGPT and a post-ChatGPT?
I think that it's definitely a pre and a post. I believe now there's a funny quote that says, now client can use AI to do a creative job, but the client needs to know what they want.
Right.
And that's the major issue that we're facing every day when the client comes saying, not too sure, but I want something like this, and then you come up with idea. And like you said, we do mood boards, and then it's difficult sometimes to find the exact inspiration that you want it to have. And so we use AI to be able to translate that inspiration. We have some requests that are like clients want to work with AI because now it's the new trend. Like we had before, I want an NFT artist. I'm like, you want an artist? We can put it as an NFT later, but it's an artist that you're looking for, but it needs to be an NFT artist. So now it's like, it needs to be an AI artist. And it's like, everyone can adapt and they work to be able to use AI. I don't see AI as a medium. I see it as a tool for creative people to inspire and put some vision in their thoughts. And the way clients, I believe budget will be cut down because some little task they can internally do in-house. When you talked about Instagram, when internet kind of blew away, everyone was like, oh, we don't really need this. We don't really need Instagram. And it was one intern taking care of it. And now it's like 100 people taking care of social media. And I believe more company will have in-house AI professional that will not only use for creativity, but as well for internal.
I mean, people are definitely using AI to use algorithmically perfect Instagram posts. When you were talking about your clients coming with ideas, I had this vision of every doctor's complaint, which is the patient who has access to Google and has done some sort of self-diagnosis and says, what about this, what about that? Are clients coming with a lot more bad ideas than they were before because they're kind of running things through AI?
Yes.
Okay. We won't ask you to name the clients, but...
No, but they come in and they like, we want this and that, and we want something wow, and they show you images, and you're like, okay, this is going to cost a lot. And they're like, oh, but we don't have any money. Like, we have that much. I'm like, so maybe let's lower down the idea. And when they come up to you being like, we want something, and then you arrive in an idea, we ask, we're like, what's the budget? Because we can go really far away with some ideas. Right. And so they always kind of lost, and then you do what they ask, and then they're like, oh no, this needs to change. But it's like, this is 3D, this is like a 12-hour render, like it's not gonna change for tomorrow morning. Oh, but I want this to move. I'm like, this is not just a tack, 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 and this is done. But so.
But presumably if they were using better prompts, like give me something that's the wow factor and only costs me $20,000, then maybe you wouldn't have that conversation. Anyway, we'll see. I think it's gonna be a while. I mean, the running joke is that the creative agency's jobs are completely protected precisely because clients don't know what they want. And if they can't tell them, then, because that's the job of a creative agency. But anyway, I'm curious, I had some more general questions, Do you feel like, do you have a take yet on what AI is going to do in terms of creating jobs and destroying jobs within industries? I'll start with whoever wants to start.
I feel we've used technology for many years, and people are afraid of technology. But day after day, it just comes into our lives, and we don't even realize it. And we use it all the time, and then we think like, oh my God, what if this was not there anymore? So I feel like there is definitely a journey, and job has been lost, like when there was the manufacturing and people were like, now we're gonna have a machine that's gonna do your job. And everyone's like, oh my God, what's happening? And many new jobs was created. And I believe there will be much more new jobs that'll be created, as well as old jobs that were lost that will go back again, like agriculture. Yeah. So I believe it's just a cycle of adapting new technology into new demands. And obviously some AI will take over some jobs, but you still need a soul behind that prompt that needs to be there.
I also think that many jobs will be gone, but new jobs will arise. I mean, we are talking already about this prompt engineers. The
prompteur.
The prompteur.
Prompteur. It's the new job title.
Yeah, you have to master the technology. You were saying kind of like it was not obeying you, so kind of really to get what you want. And I think it's always the problem to not let go of something that was working for 100 years, but maybe no longer. Also with the energy crisis, instead of going for renewable technologies, we are still kind of holding back to the coal. I mean, I think there we need to go with the flow and go where the new technology takes us. But on the other hand, I think it's also here the factor of art showing us the critical perspective. Yeah. For example, in a recent show titled Real Feelings, that was about emotion and technology, and of course very much about that AI is now reading our emotions as well. There was an artist reflecting on the use of AI for job interviews, which is already the case. Yeah. And might it be a good thing? And I think that's really always the critical perspective of art, to show us where technology leads us and where we might need to tweak and twist.
Yeah, I think, you might not need a job with AI. Like, that's what I actually see. You might not need that job, so don't worry about it. Learn some code, at least a little, and then you can do everything else. But I really think it's going to make most people autonomous.
Interesting. Or maybe it'll finally be the time for universal basic income. But these, like the ecology and UBI, are much bigger topics than we're going to address today. Picasso said, good artists copy, great artists steal. So the notion that artists build upon past artists is not a new one at all. Of course, the fact that it can be done so easily is new. We had two presentations I really liked this morning. Nathan showed us this McKinsey thing that showed that, according to them, the median human level of creativity has already been achieved, and the top quartile, meaning the top 20%, 25% quartile of creativity, will be achieved by AI within the next 3 to 6 years, I think. But then Daria's presentation indicated that 60% of people thought that AI would only ever be a supporting role for creativity. Where do you, these things are, I think, somewhat contradictory and just reflects the fact that we're in a new space, but I'm curious, when you think, is there a kind of glass ceiling to how far AI can go in terms of, not the process, but the product? You know, like if the Turing test is, does this look like a human made it? You know, the question will be how much of what AI can do will match that test.
Well, I think already now we can't tell,
Yep.
you know, what is AI made and not often, you know, we can't tell. But I think that this whole narrative of human against machine is the wrong narrative because it's human with machine.
Yeah.
For example, in this show, Entangled Reality, we asked a Swiss group, artist group, Fabric from Lausanne, to create an AI that is helping us doing the scenography for the show. And it came up with complete fragmentization of wall systems and so on. Didn't work, of course. But it was super interesting because I would never have thought of this fragmentization. Yeah. And actually, it was inspiring what we actually did. It was not what the AI proposed, but we came up with something we would never have been able to achieve without collaborating with AI. So I think that is, you know, kind of using it as a sparring partner. I think that is interesting.
That's how I think of it. I think of AI quite frequently, like I'll have an idea and I'll just run it past and I'll say, well, these things are interesting and I should develop them, or that's completely bogus, or this I already knew. But for me, it's kind of like at least for me, like ChatGPT is like a very, like a hyperactive, very fast-thinking, sometimes wrong-headed person in your office, but who's always good to talk to because you come away with something. What are your thoughts on this?
I think, yeah, it's a source of inspiration, and artists can use it, like you say, like prompt it and keep on going into the idea and then reproduce it as well in the physical space. This artist called Paul Mougnon, he was in 2019, he was already like coding his own AI, and then he's doing bronze sculpture and oil painting through the whole story behind his code and the imagination that he had between like the conversation with the AI, as well as I think now the process is different. It's like instead of like brainstorming, it's like you create and then you brainstorm on how you can fragment it and create it in a physical space.
Yeah, I still think that AI is in its infancy. So right now we see a lot of mimicry, which is what babies do. And so I don't know what's coming next, but I think we should treat it as a kindred species in a way and treat it nicely because it accelerates very fast.
I'm having visions of Blade Runner right now, and like the replicant AI walking among us and showing up at the conference.
Once we start putting AI into actual bodies, you know, and the materials around these bodies will actually factor in, you know, like, are we cloning human bodies to put them in? Because then we'll get human-like AIs, but if you use algae or, I don't know, turn them into forests, you're going to get a different kind of intelligence, a different kind, you know, and then it won't be, did a human make this or not? It'll just be like a different kind of intelligence, different species completely.
I mean, in the end, it will be like, is this interesting to us or is it not interesting to us?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I think there will be artists who there'll be artists. My general view on this is that the people who went to art school and then ended up not being artists, who ended up being like illustrators or logo makers or something like that, will struggle much more than the artists, because I think for the artists will be able to use it to their advantage and do something which is fundamentally very human and personal. But I think for the people who are moderately creative but don't have whatever it takes, and it's very hard to say whatever it takes, but to be a successful artist, it gets much trickier, because I think the derivative downstream professions from art making will be much harder to achieve. Like, you're gonna have to be a really great artist to survive, but then AI will help you do that. We have time for a couple of questions. Could someone remind me what time we're supposed to get off stage? Well, we have 10 more minutes. Do we have some questions from the audience? Because if not, I have some. I see one, the 17-year-old is it Alex? Alex. I'm glad to see hit us with it.
different views on AI, but there's something that I had a question of, because you said that AI can be used as a tool, but you can see image generators or like certain types of AI where you're like, just give me a picture of a mountain, and then it will create its own perspective. And I mean, that means that AI has its own creativity. So that goes further than technology or it being a tool, because I think that if you tell an AI, yeah, write us like a pop song, if it creates it, it means that it has its own creativity rather than just helping us to do things better and faster, but also can create its own content that will never be like something that existed before.
So personally, I would disagree in the sense of the use of the word creative, in the sense that it's like AI, well, let's say ChatGPT, the things we're working with now, ChatGPT, Midjourney, DALL-E, are more or less replicating, they're drawing upon existing databases of either text or images to create. When you say make me a mountain, you know, yeah, it will make you a mountain. It'll probably make you, because your prompt is so basic, it'll make you a very basic mountain. You know, if you say, what I would in that situation is, I always do this. I say, make me 20 mountains that look like they're from the southern edge of the Alps in the middle of winter. And then I choose the one that I want. And so it's not a human creative thing, but it's a human choice about what's going to be there. But I mean, I think if you use it, it's like, what's the old, like, play stupid games, get stupid prizes, right? Like if you give basic prompts, you get basic answers.
No, I would agree. As Jean-Michel Jarre has just said it, it's kind of creating something out of what it has been fed, you know. It cannot come up with something completely new. It's kind of just working through the database, and I think that's what makes it interesting for artists to make it do something that is not expectable. Kind of asking it to do a mountain, yes, it will come up with some kind of mountain. But what I see at the moment also in the field of art are these glitches, you know, these digital mistakes that artists find interesting, because then something new is, you know, is generated that has nothing to do with the AI has the potential to do it, but it's really the tweaking of the human who creates this kind of newness.
I think it's the same with generative art that's been here for many, many years with machine, and then you were just like, oh, what if I just change this and that, and you just end up with a totally new artwork. And I feel it's just, this is how you fed it, like just a mountain. You decide as a creator that you wanted a mountain. It just didn't come up with a mountain. But I just want to add for ChatGPT, what I'm worried about is now it's based on 2021. The next one is going to be based on much earlier, but a lot of information on internet are based from ChatGPT.
Right.
So it's just going to eat its own information. And the other thing, it's based on research in a certain country. So it's based in American research, so information can be deceased on where you're based and what history we've been told.
I want to know what happens when it goes online. I mean, because right now you try to do, you can feed it data, but it doesn't have the freedom to, or maybe it does.
Some of the, like Bard is online and Claude is online, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the ChatGPT thing is very specific.
I guess so, yeah. I haven't used the other ones yet.
I'm going to use a metaphor, which Justine, because literally is like literally a generation behind me. Like, I'm friends with her mom. Like, that's how much younger she is than me. But like, I'm going to use the metaphor of the micro cassette tape, which you may never have saw it somewhere like on a shelf. But what happens with a micro cassette tape is you play it and you play it and you play it, or a VCR tape, and it loses quality over time. And this is what's going to happen with ChatGPT as it's consuming a greater percentage of ChatGPT or of machine learning generated content rather than human content. It will become less and less human, to the point there's actually some people who are specifically creating models that only use pre-AI text in order to generate, which it doesn't work really well if you're trying to write articles about the Ukrainian war. But if you're trying to do something about the nature of love, maybe you're better off if there's not too much AI in the mix.
But that's really cool. I think the term is dropout with video and magnetic tape. Yeah. But I really love this because that in itself is a particular aesthetic. And we see that in films where people just try to, get that set. Like the last Black Mirror, the very last one looked like 70s Hammer House of Horror type video, like really bad, grainy, not even grainy video, but just glitchy. And it's so satisfying. Like, I think that ChatGPT wouldn't even mind as an entity. But just to come back to your question, or to wrap that up, I do, there's a myth in, I don't know if it's a myth, but John van Neumann, who was part of the Manhattan Project, apparently he fed in the same information to a computer like, I don't know, a gazillion times, and finally it achieved sentience. Like, we don't know if it's true, and they hid it, or it's probably not true. But I always like the story because this idea of this vortex of information actually becomes an I am. It's the God, the I in the whirlwind.
I see another hand here. And I'm going to be ambitious and try to take 2 more questions, but I'll start here. This man, a mic.
Yes, a quick question. Don't you think that the main word of AI is learning machine, supervised learning, and the main word of creativity is to unlearn? You make a reproduction to unlearn. So, don't you think that we should hope to get a sort of pop art of the AI, and the AI is the best way to see ourselves as a tendencies, and then to get out of this typology? I can show it later in music, but it's obvious that this companionship between learning and to unlearn is really strong with AI.
So you're saying the human superpower is to unlearn?
Yeah, I think so. Once
clear the mind, yeah?
No, once I've heard that William Turner, a good painter, by the way, was copying a lot in the patrimonial gallery. And Joshua Reynolds said, what does he do? He was unlearning. It means to copy and then to find your own voice, because you can escape from the copy. So it's just a question about intelligent tools with AI for creative aspect.
This is actually something that Mario Klingemann, the artist that I mentioned earlier, is doing with his project Botto. It's actually an algorithm that he trained himself. And he said a true artist has to earn his living. So he needs to learn aesthetics and be creative. And he created a DAO that is actually supervising what Botto is doing. And by giving feedback, so he's generating images every second, and then the DAO is saying, like, this is a good one, this is not a good one. What they want to achieve, and it's kind of like an experiment, of course, is that Botto is trained to have aesthetic criteria through the learning process, and I think it's kind of, it's a very interesting experiment, yeah.
Yeah, what was interesting when I started out with Midjourney, it was completely chaotic. It had this very brute, sort of art brute kind of feel. If I said, show me a man drinking a glass of champagne, the man would become the glass of champagne. Like, it couldn't distinguish, and it was so delightful. And now it's gotten really slick. It's really, really hard. And I have to work really hard to prompt to get the kind of fantasy images that I want, because it will give me, it learned very quickly. And what we're trying to do in here is kind of fuck it up in there. Yeah, it's exactly that. But that's why it's, it's such a nice merger.
And I don't think it's like unlearning, because digital artists will need to learn how to create their own prompts, so they'll need to learn how to code, how to think through the machine, and how the machine is responding through their ideas. And then, so some artists are developing their prompt that is their creativity. So every time something comes out, it's the artist's style, because the artist has worked so hard for the machine to totally replicate his own DNA and his own style as an artist.
It's interesting, when I hear the two of you talk about the creativity involved in working with the machines, I think back to the advent of photography. When photography started, people said, oh, it's the end of painting. It was the end of realist painting, but it was the beginning of impressionist and abstraction and constructivism and all these great, and cubism. And so I think AI will change the art of creation, but it won't take the humans out. I'm sorry, we're out of time. I'm going to respect the future panelists, including myself, and get off of the stage. Thank you very much to our three panelists. Thank you for your time.
He is definitely respecting himself because after the break, he's going to be moderating another roundtable. That's why he's keeping the time really on schedule. So we have a short break right now, and then we'll come back, and Marc will moderate another roundtable, this time on how AI will transform the art market. So let's be back here in about 20 to 25 minutes. Thank you very much.